Hi again. I wanted to talk about this book, which I think should be a part of every Christian's library today. Lee Strobel, The Case for the Real Jesus. A tremendous asset to Christian apologetics in the light of the continual bombardment of propaganda from the media that are very willing to quote Bart Ehrman, because Bart Ehrman has some credibility as a text critic, a New Testament text critic. But Bart Ehrman is far more well known than several other text critics who are, if anything, even more credible. One of them is, of course, Bruce Metzger, who trained Bart Ehrman and has written tremendous amount on this very subject of textual tradition and the credibility of the Gospels. And then there's Daniel Wallace. So in this book, Lee Strobel interviews Daniel Wallace, at least as prominent in the field of text criticism as Bart Ehrman, but much less well known. And he interviews Wallace about the credibility of the Gospels and takes on the claim, for instance, of Muslims that the credibility of Christ is lessened by the disparities or discrepancies, as they would want to find them, in the Gospel accounts. Now that's one of the main arguments of Islam. Now Ehrman makes much of these same seeming discrepancies or disparities in the Gospels and draws similar conclusions. Daniel Wallace does not. So in this particular section of the book, the chapter is Challenge 2. The Bible's portrait of Jesus can't be trusted because the church tampered with the text. So that's the challenge. Now Wallace here is discussing the core of the Gospels and the credibility of the Gospels. And we jump into the middle of the interview here. Daniel Wallace has been subjecting the New Testament's text to scrutiny for decades. Has your scholarship shaken your belief that the Bible is trustworthy? I asked. That is, Strobel asked. No, not at all. But it has caused me to see it in a different light, he said. For example, I thought when I started out that when I saw the words of Jesus, they must be exactly those words that he uttered. But historians of that day were trying to accurately get the gist of what was said. For example, it would take you no more than 2 hours to say all of Jesus' words in the Gospels. Well, that's not a very long time to speak. It takes only 15 minutes to get through the Sermon on the Mount. But when Jesus delivered his sermons, people were often hungry at the end. I don't think Jesus gave 15-minute sermonettes for Christianettes. So the Gospels contain a summary of what he said. And if it's a summary, maybe Matthew used some of his own words to condense it. That doesn't trouble me in the slightest. It's still trustworthy. Strobel asked, do you think this idea of inerrancy has been elevated out of proportion to its genuine importance? And Wallace replies, at times, some have made it the litmus test for whether a person is a Christian. Theologian Carl F. Henry argued against this in 1976. He urged young evangelicals to recognize that while inerrancy is important, it's not on the level of certain other crucial truths, and belief in inerrancy shouldn't be used as an excuse not to engage seriously with history. Still, sometimes Christians put a roadblock in front of somebody, saying they can't become a Christian until they believe in inerrancy. Wallace paused. May I tell you a story along these lines, he asked. Please, I said. Some years ago I met a Muslim girl who was interested in Christianity, he said. She came to me with 6 handwritten, single-spaced pages of supposed discrepancies in the Gospels. She had been taught by Muslims that if you can find one error in the Gospels, then you can't believe anything they say. She said to me, you're going to have to answer every single one of these before I can believe anything about Christianity. My response was, don't you think this list proves that the writers didn't conspire and collude when they wrote their Gospels? She said, I've never thought of it that way. I said, what you need to do is look at the places where the Gospels do not disagree at all. And what do you find? You find a core message that is revolutionary. Jesus was confessed as the Messiah by his disciples. He performed miracles and healed people. He forgave sins. He prophesied his own death and resurrection. He died on a Roman cross, and he was raised bodily from the dead. So now, what are you going to do with Jesus? Even if the gospel writers have differences in their accounts, whether we should really call them discrepancies is a topic for later, then this only adds to their credibility by showing they weren't huddled together in a corner cooking all of this up. Doesn't their agreement on an absolute core of central beliefs suggest that they got the basics right precisely because they were reporting on the same events? What happened to her? Strobel asked Wallace. 2 weeks later she became a Christian, and now she's a student at Dallas Seminary. My point is this: inerrancy is important, but the gospel is bigger than inerrancy. Wallace's analysis seemed logical to me. In fact, I was reminded of the way I looked at the Bible when I checked out Christianity for the first time. When I was an atheist, I set aside the issue of inerrancy and merely treated the New Testament as a set of ancient documents, which it obviously is. I told Wallace. That way I could evaluate them as I could any other ancient documents, and of course some differences are expected in all such records. Is that a legitimate way to evaluate the New Testament? As he was listening, Wallace was sitting back with his arms folded across his chest. I think it's thoroughly legitimate, he replied. As one British scholar said, we should treat the Bible like any other book in order to show it's not like any other book. That's better than the opposite position, which has become an evangelical mantra: hands off the Bible. We don't want people to find any mistakes in it because we hold to inerrancy. I brought Wallace back to the apparent discrepancy in Mark 2:26 that essentially wrecked Bart Ehrman's faith. In that passage, Jesus is teaching that the Sabbath was made for people, not vice versa. He cites, that is Ehrman cites, an incident in the Old Testament where King David and his hungry soldiers ate the showbread in the temple, though this was reserved for the priests to eat. Mark says this happened when Abiathar was the high priest, but 1 Samuel 21, 1-6 indicates Abiathar's father, Ahimelech, was priest. I'm just curious, I said. Have you looked at that passage? I wrote a paper for the Evangelical Theological Society that described 5 possible explanations in dealing with this, he said. Did you conclude that one of those explanations was best? I asked. In the end, I didn't have a conclusion, he replied, but I said, whatever you do with this, don't throw out Christ if you're going to question inerrancy. And I think that's fair. Personally, I believe in inerrancy, but I'm not going to die for inerrancy. I will die for Christ. That's where my heart is, because that's where salvation is, he said with conviction. The Bible wasn't hanged on the cross. Jesus was. So that's how one very famous text critic, not as famous, we grant, as Bart Ehrman, how one very famous text critic, Daniel Wallace, deals with the question of inerrancy versus credibility. The credibility of Christ, Wallace determines, does not depend upon an inerrant text, as Muslims unfortunately assume. Lee Strobel, The Case for the Real Jesus. I'll put in links to a video we did some years back called Bible Basis of Authority, and another link to a small series we've done called Who Really is the Faithful and Discreet Slave, a specific video we did on Lee Strobel's work.